Welcome back to Deep Dive English. I'm your host, and today we are talking about your superpower, sleep.
It really is a superpower.
Mm.
And it's the topic that everyone, well, it seems like everyone, relegates to the bottom of the priority list. We're all convinced it's the one thing you can sacrifice when time runs short.
Right. It's seen as a weakness, almost.
Exactly. But the sources we've gathered today, and we're talking about work from top neuroscientists, high-performance researchers, they completely reframe sleep. It's not some fluffy indulgence.
Yeah.
It is the single most demanding and required maintenance procedure for high-level human function, period.
Okay, let's unpack this with some real urgency then, because we've all heard advice about sleep forever, get your 8 hours, and so on. But here's the hook from our sources. Did you know that sleep is the single most effective thing you can do to reset your brain and body?
That's the core takeaway. It's presented less as a simple rest period and more as the ultimate performance enhancer.
Better than any diet plan, any training schedule, any supplement stack you can buy.
It sounds like hyperbole. It really does, but the science absolutely supports it. So our mission today is, I think, fundamental. It's to move past this cultural idea that sleep is a luxury you indulge in when everything else is finally done.
The reward at the end of a productive day.
The reward, yes. We need to internalize the data, the hard data, that confirms sleep is a non-negotiable biological necessity. It is vital and critical to your survival as, eating food or breathing air.
And that's where this modern paradox really comes in. In our hyper-productive, always-on society, we meticulously track everything else. We count our steps, we optimize our protein intake, we track our screen time.
Every variable.
Every single one. But sleep is often treated like an obstacle, right? Something we try to minimize or to hack. So why is this view, according to the sources we looked at, so fundamentally flawed?
Because that view is built on what our experts call a dangerous myth. It's just that simple.
Dangerous myth.
If you view sleep as a weakness, you are actively, consciously choosing to operate with a systemic deficit. You're basically deciding that short-term output is worth sacrificing the core stability and function of your entire neurological system.
Wow.
Yeah. The data shows that minimizing sleep doesn't create high performers. It creates perpetually impaired, emotionally fragile individuals who just think they're performing well. That's the scary part.
Okay, let's start right there with that most pervasive and frankly toxic myth. It's particularly cherished by ambitious people, by the overcommitted. I'm talking about the I'll sleep when I'm dead mentality.
Right. Or the slightly more common version, I can get by on 5 hours.
I'm fine on 5 hours a night. We all know someone who says that.
We do. And this is a point where the scientific community is completely unified, unyielding really. Trying to survive on 5 or 6 hours of sleep isn't a sign of grit or strength. It's a form of sustained biological injury.
Injury. That's a strong word.
It is, but it's accurate. The blunt scientific truth, as one of the researchers puts it, is that if you neglect sleep and you perpetuate that myth, you will reach the state of dead much, much faster.
And the immediate danger is critical here because a lot of people genuinely swear they function perfectly fine on minimal sleep. They'll say, oh, I'm just one of those people. Or they claim they're part of that tiny, tiny genetic minority that needs only 5 hours.
That minority is so small, it's statistically irrelevant for almost everyone listening. What they feel is completely irrelevant compared to the objective data.
So what happens immediately and profoundly when you are sleep deprived, even if you don't feel impaired?
The impairment is there whether you feel it or not. The data is clear. After being awake for just 19 hours, your cognitive ability, we're talking your reaction time, your decision-making capacity, is functionally equivalent to being legally drunk.
Legally drunk.
Yes. You don't feel drunk, you don't have this slurred speech, but your brain is just as impaired. Sleep deprivation has these immediate and profound negative effects because it targets the highest order functions first.
Which means the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for executive functions, complex thinking, planning.
Right.
That's the first to go offline.
Precisely. That's the first area to get hit. The moment sleep debt starts to accumulate, you experience a significant loss of cognitive control. And this isn't just a minor reduction like you're a little bit slower.
Yeah.
It's a breakdown in functions that are absolutely necessary for peak performance. We see a, frankly, catastrophic loss of creativity because the brain can't make novel connections or associations.
And just focus.
Gone. Severe reduction in sustained focus. Your ability to filter out distractions just collapses. Everything seems equally important.
And this breakdown, this is what manifests as what we call brain fog.
Yeah.
We use that term so lightly, but our sources highlight it as a very real, key physiological symptom.
It is. Brain fog is the palpable sensation of a system operating inefficiently because it is metabolically poisoned.
Voicey.
Yes, it is not just feeling tired. When you're sleep deprived, the immediate effects instigate these profound mood swings or general emotional volatility.
Why is that? Why do we get so moody?
It's because the emotional control centers, which are housed partly in that prefrontal cortex we mentioned, they become suppressed, they go quiet. Meanwhile, the more reactive, primitive emotional centers, specifically the amygdala, become hyper-responsive.
So the accelerator is floored and the brakes are gone.
That is a perfect analogy. You are biologically programmed to overreact. Everything feels like a disproportionate crisis because you literally lack the rational capacity to regulate your emotional response.
Okay, and what about learning? I mean, what is happening to our ability to retain information? If someone is pulling an all-nighter to cram for an exam, they're actually sabotaging their own efforts, aren't they?
Absolutely, 100% sabotaging them. The memory implications are severe. There's this process called memory consolidation.
Right, taking short-term memories and making them permanent.
Exactly. Taking those fragile, temporary memories you formed during the day and transforming them into durable, long-term files in the brain. That process happens almost exclusively during sleep.
So if you don't sleep, the files just get deleted.
Pretty much. Specifically, your declarative memory, so the recall of facts and events, that's processed during deep, non-REM sleep. If you skip that stage, that learning is lost. It's gone. You are pouring new knowledge into what the sources describe as a leaky sieve.
A leaky sieve, I like that.
And it gets worse. Chronic sleep debt also severely impairs your ability to encode new memories. So not only can you not save what you learned yesterday, but your ability to learn new things today just plummets the longer you stay awake.
Okay, this is where the science gets tangible and honestly a little terrifying. We need to talk about the physical mechanism that links sleep loss directly to that brain fog and to these long-term health consequences. It's the brain's unique self-cleaning mechanism. Let's use the cleaning crew analogy.
Yes, this is perhaps the most crucial recent discovery in sleep science, the glymphatic system. It's a game changer. While you're awake, your brain is a metabolic powerhouse. It consumes about 20% of your body's total energy.
20% in an organ that's only 2% of our body weight.
It's incredible, isn't it? And all that activity produces massive amounts of waste byproducts, metabolic detritus, just like a busy factory.
Right.
And these toxins, they build up in what's called the interstitial space. That's the fluid-filled space between your brain cells.
Okay, so the factory's running all day, trash is piling up in the alleyways between the buildings. What happens when the cleaning crew finally arrives during sleep?
This is the amazing part. During deep, slow-wave sleep, the brain literally shifts into a maintenance mode. And the key mechanism is that the glial cells, which are the support structure for your neurons, they actually shrink
They shrink?
by up to 60%. This is a massive physiological change. That shrinkage dramatically increases the size of that interstitial space, those alleyways we were talking about.
So it physically increases the space to make it easier to clean up. That's incredible.
It is. It's a brilliant piece of biological engineering. So once that space opens up, the cerebrospinal fluid, the CSF, the fluid that cushions your brain and spine, it gets pumped powerfully throughout the brain's tissues.
Like a power washer.
Exactly like a power washer. It acts like this powerful solvent, flushing all the accumulated metabolic toxins out and into the circulatory system, where they can be carried away and disposed of by the liver. It's a literal toxin washout.
And the flow rate of this cleaning process, it's not just a little bit better during sleep.
It increases exponentially. It's a trickle when you're awake and a fire hose when you're in deep sleep.
So what are the specific toxins we should really care about here? What's getting washed out?
The primary waste products are molecules you may have heard of, like beta amyloid and tau proteins.
Beta amyloid. That's directly linked to Alzheimer's disease.
It is the key toxic protein strongly implicated in the progression of Alzheimer's and other forms of cognitive decline. So if you consistently skip the deep sleep required for this flushing process, these sticky toxic plaques accumulate. They literally clog the neural pathways and inhibit communication between your neurons.
So connecting this back to the learner, the high performer, the brain fog they feel when they're sleep deprived isn't just an abstract feeling. It's not in their head.
Not at all. It is the direct physical consequence of a failed nightly cleaning cycle. You cannot achieve peak cognitive performance, quick thinking, complex problem solving, high creativity if your operating system is literally sticky and clogged with waste products.
It's like trying to run complex software on a computer that's full of malware and has no free RAM.
That's it, exactly. This isn't just about feeling slow. It's about operating with physical impediments to neural transmission. So performance enhancement is truly, fundamentally impossible without proper nightly detoxification. You are attempting to run a delicate, high-precision instrument like a fine-tuned race car, but you're constantly feeding it dirt and demanding top speed. The toxins just degrade everything.
That terrifying insight into toxin accumulation, it brings us perfectly to the master controller that dictates when this cleaning crew is supposed to arrive. We have to talk about the circadian rhythm.
Yes, this is the core operating system of your entire body. The circadian rhythm is essentially your genetically encoded internal 24-hour biological clock, and it's far more than a simple timer. It's a complex, self-sustaining oscillator that manages thousands of bodily functions.
Thousands. Oh.
Yes, it orchestrates everything from hormone release like cortisol to wake you up, a growth hormone to repair you, to your digestive efficiency, your kidney filtration, and crucially, the precise timing of your alertness and your sleep.
So where is this master clock located, and how does it maintain that 24-hour schedule so rigorously?
The master pacemaker is a tiny, tiny cluster of about 20,000 neurons located in a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN for short.
The SCN.
And it receives direct input from the optic nerves in your eyes, which means its primary timekeeper, its main cue, is light exposure. But, and this is a key point, the rhythm itself isn't simply reacting to light. It's internally generated.
That's fascinating. How does the body generate an almost perfect 24-hour cycle from within?
This is where we get into the really cool molecular clockwork. At the cellular level, in every cell of your body, the rhythm is maintained by this self-regulating feedback loop that involves specific clock genes.
Clock genes.
The most prominent ones are called period, or per for short, and cryptochrome, or cry. Essentially what happens is these genes turn on and they produce proteins, PER and CIY. As the concentration of these proteins builds up over the course of the day, they eventually circle back and they inhibit the very genes that created them. This causes their own production to stop and their levels to drop.
So they turn themselves off?
Exactly. And once the protein levels fall low enough, the original genes are no longer inhibited, so they kick back on and the whole cycle starts all over again. And that entire process of synthesis and degradation takes, you guessed it, roughly 24 hours.
Wow. So every single cell in my body is internally programmed to run on the schedule, and the SCN in the brain is just the conductor of the orchestra, making sure everyone is synchronized.
That is the perfect way to put it. The SCN is the master conductor. It takes the external cues, primarily light and darkness, and it sends out signals throughout the body to align all the peripheral clocks in your organs, your liver, your pancreas, your muscles.
And this alignment is what dictates the precise timing of when you feel naturally awake, when your cortisol is peaking in the morning, and when your body is starting that cool-down process required to feel tired at night.
Exactly. So that feeling of, I am crashing hard at 3 p.m., that's not some psychological weakness or a lack of discipline. It's driven by this strict biological schedule that pre-programs dips in alertness.
So we should respect that dip, not fight it with a third cup of coffee.
Precisely. The body operates optimally when this internal clock is respected. Our sources stress this again and again. Peak cognitive and physical performance happens when your activities align with your natural rhythm. If you're trying to force peak concentration during a natural circadian dip, which for most people is late afternoon or very early morning, you're fighting a monumental biological tide.
And that's inefficient.
Massively inefficient. You expend huge amounts of energy just to stay on task, and you lose focus, efficiency, and morale all at the same time.
And this really brings us to the profound friction point of modern society, doesn't it? Modern life seems almost specifically engineered to constantly violate this inherent, genetically defined rhythm.
That is the tragedy of it. We've developed artificial ways to completely override our natural light cues. Our schedules are totally divorced from the sunrise and the sunset. Shift work is probably the most damaging example, forcing a total misalignment.
Right.
But even common behaviors, like staying up late on the weekend and then sleeping in what researchers have a great name for, they call it social jet lag, that causes chronic disruption.
Social jet lag. I love that term. Yeah. So if I stay up 3 hours later on a Friday night than my usual bedtime, and then I sleep in for 3 hours, I'm giving myself a miniature version of jet lag every single weekend.
You are. You're effectively flying your internal clock 3 time zones west on Friday night, and then you're trying to fly it back east first thing Monday morning.
And what does that do to the body?
Well, this chronic disruption leads to poor cognitive performance, a compromised immune system, a much higher risk of metabolic issues like type 2 diabetes, and a whole host of long-term health risks associated with just being in a state of systemic misalignment. You're constantly sending contradictory, damaging signals to your body about what time of day it is.
Okay, so if the circadian rhythm is the master clock, we need to talk about the chemical messenger that allows us to sync up with it and actually transition to sleep. So let's do a deep dive into melatonin. The description our sources use, the vampire hormone, that feels perfect for setting the scene.
It is perfect because melatonin is fundamentally photophobic. It shuns light. It's a neurohormone that's released by the pineal gland, and it basically comes out in the darkness to signal that it's physiological night.
So it doesn't knock you out like a sleeping pill would?
No, not at all. It's not a sedative. Rather, its rising concentration communicates to every cell in your body a simple message. It is now time for the rest phase. It's the biochemical initiation of sleep preparation.
So melatonin production is fundamentally dependent on one simple factor, darkness.
Absolutely dependent on it. The process starts when the intensity of light detected by specialized receptors in your eye, they're called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, or IPRGCs.
The IPRGCs.
Right. When the light they detect drops below a certain threshold, that's the trigger. Historically, this was simple. Once the sun set, our ancestors were bathed in natural darkness, maybe some firelight, and that signal to the brain was strong and uninterrupted.
And melatonin would then begin to initiate all the necessary preparations for sleep.
Yes, including the crucial cooling down of the core body temperature, which is a necessary step for falling asleep.
But now, of course, we have introduced a powerful constant inhibitor into our pre-sleep routine, blue light. We really have to focus on the precise danger this 21st century invention poses to our natural sleep mechanisms.
The danger is not just that it's light. It's the specific wavelength of the light. Artificial light, especially from screens, phones, tablets, laptops, and even modern LED light bulbs, it contains a very high concentration of short wavelength blue light. And this specific spectrum directly mimics the light signature of a bright midday sun.
So without even realizing it, we are holding tiny sun simulators inches from our faces right before we're trying to tell our body that the sun has gone down.
Precisely. That's exactly what's happening. And the sources detail the suppression mechanism. When this blue light hits those IPRGCs in the retina, they send an immediate direct signal to the SCN, that master clock we just discussed.
And what's the message?
The signal is an urgent command. It is daytime, stay awake, suppress melatonin production now. This instantly halts the natural hormonal rise that is required for sleep onset.
And how significant is this suppression? I mean, can a few minutes of scrolling on your phone really throw off this entire delicate process?
Yes, critically so. The research shows that even modest exposure to blue light in the 2 hours before bed can delay the natural fall in your core body temperature and suppress your melatonin levels by 50% or more.
50%.
50%.
Yeah.
This isn't just a marginal delay of 10 minutes. It is a fundamental miscommunication to your body. You may feel tired from a long day, your muscles are sore, your brain is fatigued, but your brain is chemically fighting the transition to sleep because it thinks the sun is still high in the sky.
And the outcome of that is, 1, a delay in falling asleep, but 2, and maybe more importantly, a shortening of the available time for those deep restorative stages later in the night.
Exactly. If you finally manage to fall asleep late, say at 1 a.m. instead of your natural 11 p.m., you have compressed the total time available for the first few critical sleep cycles. And since deep sleep is prioritized early in the night, you are immediately entering a state of chronic deficit for that toxin washout and physical restoration.
So the actionable insight here, it has to be brutal and absolute. We have to reiterate the importance of avoiding screens and blue light exposure for at least an hour before sleep. That's what it takes to allow melatonin to rise naturally and smoothly.
It's the single highest leverage change you can implement to honor your biology. You have to create a light sunset routine for yourself. If you absolutely must use a device, it needs to be filtered aggressively, using night mode, red light settings, or even wearing blue light blocking glasses.
Or, ideally, just replace the activity entirely.
Ideally, yes. Spend that hour reading a physical paper book, listening to music, talking with someone. Use a dim, warm, red-toned light source, because the SCN doesn't mistake that for daylight. That darkness cue is the signal your brain is desperately waiting for.
Okay, so we've established that modern life poisons us with light. Now let's move to the other great modern deceiver, the thing that helps us cope with the lack of sleep caused by that light. Caffeine. The vast majority of people who are sleep deprived turn to coffee to feel fine.
And that feeling of fine is entirely counterfeit. It's a complete illusion. This reliance on caffeine to feel functional despite being deprived, it's simply the caffeine tricking your brain.
So you haven't fixed the problem.
You haven't addressed the underlying biological debt at all. You've just hijacked the signaling system. You are overriding the distress call that your body is urgently sending out, demanding rest.
To really understand this deception, we need to introduce a scientific concept that I think most people overlook when they're having that 3 p.m. latte. We need to talk about caffeine half-life. It's a massive factor in ruining nighttime sleep.
It's the defining chemical challenge of caffeine consumption. The caffeine half-life is simply the duration required for your body to eliminate 50% of the ingested caffeine from your bloodstream. And our forces emphasize a significant duration here. Caffeine stays chemically active in the system for 8 to 10 hours.
Okay, let's put that into context because that's a long time. If I finish a large coffee, say 300 milligrams of caffeine at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, by midnight, 10 hours later, I still have 150 milligrams of caffeine actively circulating in my brain. And by 8 a.m. the next morning, I still have 75 milligrams floating around, even before I've had my next cup. That's a substantial amount.
It's a huge residual amount, and that's the minimum chemical reality. Now, we have to understand how caffeine achieves this feat of artificial alertness. It doesn't generate energy. That's a huge misconception.
Right. It's not fuel.
Not at all. It works by blocking the neurological signals of tiredness. Specifically, it blocks the receptors for a crucial signaling molecule called adenosine.
Okay, so let's define adenosine. That's the chemical that builds up the longer we're awake, and it's what creates the pressure to sleep, correct?
Exactly. Adenosine is a fundamental metabolic byproduct. Every time your brain cells expend energy, which they're doing constantly, adenosine is released as a waste product into that interstitial fluid we talked about.
So the longer you're awake, the more you work, the more adenosine builds up.
The higher the concentration of adenosine climbs, it is the primary objective molecule of what we call sleep pressure, or sleep drive. And when adenosine binds to its receptors in the brain, it causes neural activity to slow down, promoting drowsiness and signaling the need for restorative rest.
And caffeine comes in and acts as an antagonist. It essentially mimics adenosine molecularly, but without having the same sedative effect. So it sits in the parking spot.
That's a perfect analogy. Caffeine is an adenosine receptor antagonist. Its molecular structure looks just enough like adenosine to fit into the receptor sites, but it doesn't activate the slowdown signal.
It just blocks it.
It just blocks it. By occupying these spots, caffeine prevents the actual adenosine molecules from landing. And this means your brain cannot register the immense sleep pressure that is building up minute by minute. So you feel artificially alert, even though the need for sleep is mounting critically underneath the surface.
But, and this is the critical distinction, even if that residual caffeine in your system allows you to fall asleep easily, maybe because you've just exhausted yourself into oblivion.
Right. The chemical need for rest, that true sleep pressure, is still there. It's built up all day, and it's present when you're trying to sleep.
The pressure is always there. And that residual caffeine actively ruins the quality of your sleep, even if the duration seems sufficient. The caffeine still occupying those adenosine receptors, it fragments your sleep. It prevents you from spending adequate time in those crucial, deep, restorative stages.
So I might spend 7 or 8 hours in bed, but my sleep microstructure is severely compromised.
It's completely disrupted. And what that means, what that disruption of the microstructure actually entails, is that during restorative non-REM sleep, your brain is supposed to produce these specific brainwave patterns, like K-complexes and sleep spindles.
And those are important for what?
They're vital for memory stabilization and for blocking out external noise so you can stay asleep. Caffeine, by blocking adenosine, suppresses the amplitude and the frequency of these essential sleep events. In simple terms, you end up spending more time in the lighter, less effective stages of sleep, even while you're completely unconscious. And that brings us full circle, right back to the toxin washout failure. If caffeine is sabotaging the deep sleep that's necessary for the glymphatic cleaning crew to arrive,
Then you still wake up with brain fog. You still wake up with accumulated beta amyloid regardless of the hours you spend asleep.
And it creates a vicious cycle.
A self-perpetuating vicious cycle. The sleep deprivation leads to reliance on caffeine, which then prevents restorative deep sleep, which increases your sleep deficit, which requires more caffeine the next day to function.
So you get perpetually stuck.
You do. You get stuck operating in this state of neuroinflammation and cognitive deficit, never truly clearing the slate or allowing your brain to fully restore itself. You pay the price every single day in reduced creative capacity and increased emotional fragility.
Okay, to truly appreciate what we are sacrificing when we compromise on sleep quality, we need to dissect the actual work the brain is performing during the night. So let's look at the necessity of the distinct phases of sleep, starting with NREM, non-rapid eye movement, deep sleep, and then we'll move to REM.
Absolutely. Sleep is not a monolithic state. It's not just an on-off switch. It is a meticulously choreographed sequence of cycles. NREM sleep is divided into 3 stages, N1, N2, and N3. N3, or slow-wave sleep, is what we commonly call deep sleep.
And it's called that because of the brain waves?
Yes, it's defined by these very slow, high-amplitude delta brain waves on an EEG.
So what are the core functions of this deep sleep stage, N3? What's happening?
N3 deep sleep is all about physical restoration and chemical maintenance. This is the stage where that glymphatic system cleanup we discussed is at its most active. The power washer is on full blast.
Okay.
It's also when the vast majority of your human growth hormone, or HGH, is released. That's vital for tissue repair, muscle growth, and metabolic regulation. And crucially, it manages that declarative memory consolidation we talked about.
So taking facts, figures, concepts learned during the day.
And initiating their transfer from the temporary storage of the hippocampus to the permanent filing cabinets of the cerebral cortex.
So physically repairing the body and organizing the day's factual data happens here in deep sleep. If we cut this short, we are literally impairing our muscle recovery and our ability to retain academic or work information.
Precisely. And deep sleep is prioritized early in the night, in the first half of the night. So if you go to bed late, that is the quota you immediately shortchange.
Okay, so that's deep sleep. Now let's pivot to REM sleep, rapid eye movement, which usually appears in cycles every 90 minutes or so, and it gets longer as the night progresses.
That's right. The REM stages get progressively longer in the second half of the night.
And REM sleep is the distinct phase where dreaming primarily occurs, and the brain, it appears almost as active as it does when we're awake.
That's the great paradox of REM sleep. On an EEG, the brain activity spikes. It looks like a waking brain, yet your body is almost entirely paralyzed.
A safety mechanism.
A very important safety mechanism called atonia, which prevents us from acting out our dreams. The functions here are psychological and emotional, not primarily physical. REM sleep is essential for emotional healing and for the consolidation of procedural memories, like motor skills.
Emotional healing. That's a really profound idea. How does REM sleep heal us psychologically?
Well, you can think of it as a form of nightly therapy that happens inside your brain. During REM sleep, we revisit intense, often emotional experiences from the previous day. But crucially, this happens in a brain state where noradrenaline, which is a key stress chemical, is almost entirely absent.
So the stress is taken out of the memory.
The brain processes the content of the memory, the narrative, but it strips away the intense, raw emotional charge that was associated with it. It keeps the lesson, but removes the sting.
So if I had a highly stressful or irritating interaction at work during the day, my brain is reviewing that memory in a calm, safe state during REM sleep, allowing me to let go of that visceral fight or flight response that was connected to it.
That's exactly the mechanism. And if you consistently cut your REM sleep short, which happens frequently because those REM cycles are longer later in the night, closer to when you wake up, you are interrupting that necessary emotional desensitization process.
And the consequence?
It leaves your emotional centers chronically reactive. It makes you jumpy, irritable, less resilient to stress the next day. The amygdala, your emotional gas pedal, maintains its hyper-responsiveness.
Okay, let's connect all the dots here and synthesize how these modern disruptions we've covered, caffeine, blue light, inconsistent scheduling, how they all prevent access to these critical restorative stages.
It's a systemic failure across the board. Blue light and inconsistent timing, they delay the onset of sleep. That shrinks the window for the early, crucial deep sleep cycles, the N3 stage, which you need for cleaning and physical repair.
And caffeine?
Caffeine, because of its long half-life, it fragments the entire sleep architecture. It prevents us from staying in those deep sleep stages effectively, and it can cut short the essential REM cycles needed for emotional and creative processing later in the night.
So the consequence then is a brain that is toxically clogged from insufficient deep sleep and emotionally dysregulated from insufficient REM sleep. This is the critical takeaway for the high-level learner. Optimizing these stages is not some side benefit.
No, it is the absolute foundation. If your goal is sustained high performance, creativity, superior memory, and stable mood regulation, it is all downstream of securing adequate, high-quality, deep and REM sleep.
It's like software maintenance.
Exactly. Treat sleep like software maintenance. Deep sleep is defragging the hard drive and running the antivirus scan. REM sleep is moving essential files to permanent storage and updating your emotional operating system. If you skip the maintenance, the whole system slows down, it crashes, and it fails to handle any kind of complex load.
We've established the dire consequences of ignoring our biology. That's crystal clear. Now let's transition to the practical, actionable solutions. How do we fix this? It's all based on respecting and leveraging that biological clock. What are the fixes that will maximize our restorative sleep stages?
The transition from the danger to the solution is actually pretty simple in concept. It involves engineering your environment to support the natural mechanisms we've discussed. Sleep hygiene is really just about listening to your circadian rhythm, not fighting it, and prioritizing the core signals of light, dark, and temperature.
Okay, so let's break it down. What are the 3 key adjustments we need to make, starting tonight, focusing on those primary levers?
First, and you could argue this is the most important, is respecting the circadian rhythm through consistency. You must commit to a highly consistent sleep time and wake time.
Every day.
Every day. Consistency is the anchor for your master clock, the SCN. This predictability allows your body to anticipate the sleep phase smoothly, ensuring all the necessary hormonal releases and the core temperature drop happen right on time.
Even on weekends.
Especially on weekends. Try to deviate by no more than 1 hour, maybe an hour and a half at most, or you introduce that damaging social jet lag we talked about.
Okay, so consistency is king. That ensures melatonin release is prompt and robust. What's the second adjustment?
Darkness is paramount. We need to double down on what we discussed regarding blue light. But this extends beyond just your phone screen. You need to darken your bedroom completely to facilitate optimal melatonin release.
How dark is dark enough?
So dark you can't see your hand in front of your face. Even tiny amounts of ambient light from street lights or, the charging LED on your laptop, that can be enough to register in the SCN and suppress that hormonal cascade. Use high-quality blackout curtains, or if that's not possible, wear a good sleep mask. Your bedroom must become a sanctuary of absolute uncompromising darkness.
Got it. And the third major environmental factor, temperature control. This is critical because it plays directly into the body's natural physiological preparation for rest.
It is absolutely vital. Keep the room cool. The initiation of sleep requires your core body temperature to drop by a couple of degrees. It's an internal signal of readiness for rest.
And if the room is too warm?
If your bedroom is too warm, your body struggles to shed that necessary heat. It delays sleep onset, and it leads to more restlessness and awakenings during the night. Our sources suggest the ideal temperature range for most people is somewhere between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's about 15.5 to 19.5 degrees Celsius.
Right. A cooler environment helps both initiate and maintain those deep, restorative N3 sleep cycles.
Okay, so beyond the better environment itself, let's talk about anchoring the rhythm on the other side of the cycle, when you wake up. If darkness is the key signal for sleep, what's the key signal for the start of the day?
Bright light exposure in the morning. It's your single best tool for setting and strengthening your circadian rhythm. Within the first hour of waking, you should seek out bright light, and ideally natural sunlight, for at least 10 to 30 minutes.
Even on a cloudy day.
Even on a cloudy day, the lux level of outdoor light is exponentially higher than indoor lighting. This powerful light exposure hits the SCN and it signals, day has officially started. Stop melatonin production. Begin the cycle of alertness. This robust morning signal strengthens the entire 24-hour rhythm, making your body more prepared for the dark signal later that evening.
And finally, we have to just reiterate the hard line on blue light and caffeine, the two chemicals and signals that are constantly tricking the system.
It has to be said again. Mandatory blue light avoidance for an hour before bed. That is the non-negotiable prerequisite for good sleep. And regarding caffeine, the actionable insight is to set a hard cutoff time. Given that 8 to 10 hour half-life, most people should aim to cease all caffeine intake by noon or 2 p.m. at the absolute latest.
to ensure that the residual levels are low enough by bedtime to avoid compromising that deep sleep quality.
Exactly.
So the comprehensive strategy is pretty clear. Consistency in your schedule, total darkness in the sleep environment, keeping the room cool, and eliminating the powerful chemical blockers and light signals that trick your brain into thinking it's time to work when it's time to rest.
By prioritizing these steps, you are fundamentally shifting control. You are no longer fighting your biology, you're aligning with it. And that allows you to leverage your body's own built-in restorative power for maximum cognitive and physical capacity.
Okay, let's bring this deep dive to a comprehensive close. We've covered some absolutely essential scientific knowledge today, moving from the microscopic cleaning mechanism of the brain right up to the macroscopic planning required for true rest.
We did. Let's just briefly recap the most impactful scientific concepts we pulled from the sources. First, the crucial understanding that sleep is a non-negotiable biological necessity, not a luxury, and that trying to survive on 5 hours is a form of self-inflicted neurological injury.
Right. Second, the incredible mechanism of the glymphatic system and the toxin washout, highlighting that brain fog is a literal metabolic waste accumulation in your brain.
Third, the detailed mechanism of the circadian rhythm, defined by the SCN and those clock genes, the period and cryptochrome genes, which dictates that your performance depends entirely on respecting your body's inherent schedule.
And fourth, that dual role of melatonin signaling sleep and blue light acting as a powerful instant suppressor of that exact signal.
And fifth, the critical deception of caffeine's long 8 to 10-hour half-life. It acts as an adenosine receptor antagonist, blocking the sleep pressure signal and critically ruining the quality of deep restorative sleep necessary for that cleanup.
And finally, the distinct roles of deep sleep for physical repair, factual memory, and toxin clearing, and REM sleep for emotional healing and psychological resilience.
The bottom line, the central theme remains the same. Treating sleep with respect is the most effective, accessible, and powerful performance strategy available to maintain your mental acuity, your emotional resilience, and your physical health.
It is not a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate strategy for operating at peak human capacity.
It truly is your biological superpower, and it's free. And as we finish this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final profound thought to ponder, built on the science of the brain's cleaning process.
If the glymphatic system is the brain's unique cleaning crew, and it's required nightly to wash away metabolic toxins like beta amyloid during deep sleep,
What is the cumulative long-term impact on your overall cognitive health and your risk of neurological diseases of perpetually allowing sleep pressure to build without adequate deep restorative cleaning? If you spend years or decades consistently skipping that crucial toxin washout, what is the insurmountable debt you accrue, and how does that debt eventually manifest down the line?
we encourage you to explore that question further. Thank you for joining us for this crucial deep dive into the science of rest.
We hope you sleep profoundly and restoratively tonight. We'll see you next time.